Who are the Dynasty must-have players? Let's find out right now.
Let's go.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Dynasty After Dark. I'm your host, Calvin Timms, and I'm going to be doing a solo pod here for the next couple weeks. If this is your first time in the podcast, thank you guys for joining and checking this out. I appreciate it. I'm going to be putting out a lot of content over the next couple weeks still, nonstop. But my co-host, Dale Terry, he is into theater, plays, and all that kind of fun stuff that I don't really understand. So he's going to be busy practicing, what a goofball doing all that stuff. But for the next couple of weeks, it's going to be more mainly just solo podcasts with me. We'll try and get him in on a podcast every week, at least one a week. But I'm going to be putting out a ton of content over the next couple of weeks still. Regardless, the show goes on, and it's not like I can't talk for a little while as well. The benefits are, when I'm doing these solo podcasts, I'm going to try and give you guys actionable and good information while also keeping it hopefully a little bit shorter because there's a little bit less back and forth. It's just me talking to myself. So hopefully you guys like this content. And if you do, please subscribe to my, follow me on Twitter at TDC_Calvin. Follow the podcast on Twitter at FF After Dark. You can subscribe, follow the channel on YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, Google, Apple, anywhere the podcasts are really found. If you're looking for the video content, I'll have some graphics here and there. That's going to be on Rumble and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe to the channels over there so you can hear all of the content that's coming out over the next couple weeks. And if you can, leave a comment and a like on the video. It just helps us out. We like to hear from you guys, and yeah, it's always a good time. So that said, today, what are we going to be talking about? I have a fun topic to talk about. These are the must-have players for the 2024 season and beyond. I've got two players for every position, and I'm going to go through them pretty quickly and why I think they're still undervalued, even though, it's been a little while, and I thought that this offseason their values would kind of raise up a little bit, but so far it has not changed much, and I think that these guys are a massive steal. So we're going to talk about all these guys here today. Again, if you like this kind of content, let me know down in the comments down below. So, all right, let's start with the quarterback position. And the first guy I'm going to talk about is going to be Jared Goff. Jared Goff, he is the quarterback for the Detroit Lions. Currently, he is the quarterback number 18 in Superflex, which is crazy. One quarterback Superflex doesn't really matter. But the reason why I find this very interesting, last year and the year before, both years with the Detroit Lions, he has finished as a top 10 dynasty quarterback. And you can say, oh, well, there was injuries, or, this guy didn't get to play a full season. But that's the NFL, guys. That is life in the NFL. There are many, many seasons where these guys do not get to play. And, we've seen it for many years now with Kirk Cousins, who's a guy I also really like this offseason. But being out there and the availability is one of the best abilities. I know it's a corny, cliche line, but availability is a very valuable stat for Dynasty. And, when you've got guys like Drake May, you've got Jaden Daniels, these rookies going ahead of him. Bryce Young is right there with him in terms of value. I think he's a massive steal when you can have another potentially top 12 Dynasty quarterback. And he's about to get a big bag. There's all the signs are he's going to get a massive extension here this offseason, probably after the draft, I'm guessing. They're probably waiting to make sure that nothing crazy happens where quarterback number 4 falls all the way to them at the end of the draft. But, crazier things have happened, but I don't expect that to happen. So they're going to give him a big sack of money this offseason, and he's only 29 years old. He's not even 30 yet, and he's not really a mobile guy. He doesn't do much on the ground. Last year, he had 21 rushing yards. The year before, 73, 87 before that. So not really going to do much with his legs. So you're not getting much value from that. So as he gets older, it's not going to hurt you that he's not a mobile guy. He's just a good pocket passer quarterback. So at the current pick range, his value right now is the 106 to 107. Again, that's JJ McCarthy, guys. I would happily take Jared Goff over J.J. McCarthy in a super flex, in a one quarterback. If you can get him for a late second in a one quarterback, I think that the value is definitely there. So in a one quarterback, he's currently going at the 201 to 203. So I think he's definitely worth it if you need a quarterback. And I don't think there's going to be much that's going to happen this offseason to change that value. So it's not like you have to rush out there and go get him. Maybe you wait till after the draft and you let these rookies kind of push him down a little bit further. They're already ahead of him, but I could see them making a case for people are going to get lost in the hype of these rookie guys. And you can, instead of the 106 to 107, maybe you can go buy him for the 108, 109. So Jared Goff, definitely a good player that I would be looking to invest in a one quarterback or super flex if you needed a quarterback this upcoming season. The other quarterback I want to talk about really quickly is going to be Will Levis with the Tennessee Titans. And Will Levis is an interesting guy. Currently ranked 24th overall. Estimated pick range, he is very hard for me to evaluate from a pick standpoint. Currently end of round 1 in terms of pick value. He's right around Baker, J.J. McCarthy, some of these other guys, Matt Stafford. I don't know how to feel about Will Levis. The upsides on Will Levis are definitely there. He's 6'4", 229 pounds, only 24 years old. Played a few games at the back half of last year. Had that first game that won him hearts and minds of a lot of people out there. Had the 4 touchdown game. Very first game in the NFL, throws 4 touchdowns against Atlanta, absolutely cooks them. But after that, it was a much rockier set of games following that game. So, a little bit of a down performance, but then they started to get that offensive line back together a little bit. And then, he started to rebound a little bit, had a very good game against Miami in week 14, 17 points there, threw for 327 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. The last game against Houston, then he got banged up. The reason why I like Will Levis, and he's a risk, this one is a lot riskier than Jared Goff. Jared Goff, I think, is very stable, and you know what you're going to get from him. Will Levis is interesting because he does have a rushing upside. Through his 9 games, he had 57 rushing yards. I don't expect that to stay the same. I think that they're going to try and get him out and move him a little bit more. But new coaching staff over here, they brought over, it's Callahan, Jim Callahan, Bryce Callahan. I don't remember the guy's name exactly. I don't remember his first name. But the moral of the story is he brought over his dad. They both worked over in the Cincinnati Bengals. His dad is considered one of the best offensive line coaches in the entire NFL. And he brought him with him to be his offensive line coach. And since then, they have completely revamped this team in free agency. They have gone out there potentially adding Andrews Pete, the world famous offensive tackle from the New Orleans Saints, or guard, one of the two, but really good offensive lineman. They've added 3 offensive linemen already in free agency. They are completely retooling this offensive line, which was bottom 5 in the NFL last year, according to pretty much every metric, PFF, NFL, whoever you look at to get your offensive line rankings, they were bottom 5. So they are retooling that. They bring in Calvin Ridley. They bring in Tony Pollard. They still have DeAndre Hopkins and Treylon Burks. They have a lot of weapons here, and they are completely retooling this offense. And, I would not be shocked. I am alone in this, I think. But if they took Brock Bowers at 7 overall, everyone has him on an offensive lineman. And it's entirely possible that they still do that. But I would not be shocked at this point if they're the team that takes Brock Bowers at 7. Feels like a good match. He finishes off this offense in a very good way. Doesn't have to be a primary weapon for this team. And if they get Brock Bowers, man, this offense is completely loaded. So Will Levis will have no excuses. And, you go back a year, there are a lot of people that liked Will Levis coming out as well. And if he can establish himself as even a decent quarterback, he's going to be right up there with the Deshaun Watsons, with the, the J.J. McCarthy's, the Drake Mays, those type of players. And his value is going to go from back end of the first to easily mid first. So you're going to see a return there if he can even be competent, right? And if he's good, man, he's going to be so cheap for the value that you're going to get back for him, especially in a Superflex league. Again, definite good value buy for me. And if you can get him in the early second, maybe you have a guy that's not completely sold on Will Levis, I think it's just a massive value buy in fantasy football here. All right, let's keep rolling here with the running backs. Two guys here, and the number one guy, I cannot believe people just love to hate on this guy. I don't get it. The first guy is going to be Najee Harris with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh, man, they've had an interesting offseason to say the least. They get rid of Kenny Pickett. They boot him off to the Philadelphia Eagles. They bring in Russell Wilson on a vet minimum 1-year contract for $1 million. Trade for Justin Fields this last weekend. They bring in Arthur Smith to be the offensive coordinator, and say what you will about Arthur Smith. He is kind of a jerk off, but he liked to use his bruising running backs. Everyone is saying, oh, this is great for Jaylen Warren. I don't think so, guys. I think he's going to utilize Najee a lot more than people are kind of giving him credit. He's only 26 years old, and I get it. That's older for a running back, but this is only his 4th year in the league. The Steelers have him potentially on a 5th-year contract. If they want to after this year, they can sign him to his 5th-year contract. And when you look at this offense, right, whether it's Russell Wilson or Justin Fields, neither one of these guys is going to be bad for Najee Harris. They are going to run the ball a ton. They get rid of Deontay Johnson. They send him over to the Carolina Panthers. I fully expect them to take a wide receiver in round 2 or round 3 of this upcoming draft, especially with the depth at the position. But there's a lot of opportunity here for Najee Harris. Now, you go back to his rookie year, 94 targets with 74 catches. Russell Wilson is not afraid to dump it off to the running back. So if Russ is out there, I could see Najee getting quite a few more dump offs. But everyone is going to say, well, Najee was really bad for most of the year. He was. I don't know. I don't understand it completely, but he finished the season with a 4.06 yard per carry average with 8 touchdowns, only 29 receptions, which is not great. But again, that kind of goes to the quarterback play. I think he's got better hands than people give him credit for, but a lot of that work was kind of given off to Jaylen Warren. So I don't expect that to come back completely to what it was that rookie year. But, if he could finish like he did in 2022, where he had 53 targets for 41 catches, I expect that number to be a little bit higher because they're better quality passes than what he had in 2022 from Mitch Trubisky and Kenny Pickett. Let's say he gets around 300, 350 yards through the air. Again, I think he's going to have 1,000 minimum on the ground and another 7 to 10 touchdowns. So worst case scenario, he's going to finish as an RB2 low end. So you're going to get exact value for him that you're paying for him, essentially, right? Best case scenario, he's going to be able to finish as a low-end RB1. And I think that's just so valuable considering all the movement we've seen at running back this offseason. He's a guy that is a little bit more established, and his role is a little bit more well-known on this team. And again, his estimated pick value is 201 to 202. Like, that is so cheap for Najee Harris, guys. That is a steal for a running back. The wide receiver craze has completely taken over the NFL in fantasy football, and I think that Najee is a massive buy. Now, the other guy I want to talk about as a running back, who I do not understand this whatsoever, is going to be Zach Moss, who is the new running back for the Cincinnati Bengals. Now, again, there was a lot of shuffling at the running back position, but you look at this roster, the running backs, they have Chase Brown and Zach Moss. Chase Brown, I get it. He was a 5th-round pick, guys. I'm not that worried about it whatsoever. Zach Moss is estimated as the 209 to 210 in terms of draft pick value. He's the running back 39. Last year, in 14 games, he finished as the running back 31 with Gardner Minshew as his primary guy. Now, there are many games where, that's 14 games, but there are a couple of games in here, technically he played 17% of snaps against Houston in Week 18. Week 15 against Pittsburgh, he played 28% of snaps. In Week 10 against New England, he played 16% of snaps. This is when they were starting to bring Jonathan Taylor back in line in this offense as well. So they were trying to give the role back to JT. Now, Zach Moss was very, very efficient last year. He had a 4.34 yards per carry, 4.9 the year before on limited touches, 4.29 his rookie year with Buffalo, and then 3.6 his second year with Buffalo. I think he's a very valuable player for this team. He's going to fill the Joe Mixon role, and Joe Mixon was very solid for fantasy football last year. He's going to get a lot more dump offs from Joe Burrow than what he got from Gardner Minshew just last year. They're going to use him more in the Joe Mixon role again. And if you look at Joe Mixon just last year, I'm just pulling it up really quickly. Last year, he had 64 targets, and I get it, not all those were from Joe Burrow, but that's just how they use the primary running back in this offense. So I think that it's entirely possible Zach Moss has close to 1,000 yards rushing, probably 5 to 8 rushing touchdowns. And if he gets around 50, even 60 targets, man, that's going to be such a bump for him in fantasy football. And again, he's a running back 4 right now, and I think he has top 24 potential with this team. He was 31 last year with very limited play time in 4 different games, right? So I think that, in 10 games, if you can be the running back 31, you are doing something pretty good. So Zach Moss, he's definitely worth it. Again, at 209, 210, you're looking at guys like Bucky Irvin in this upcoming draft. Give me Zach Moss for that value. He's 26 years old. He's a little bit older, but again, this is only his 5th year in the league. He signed a 2-year contract with this team, so I think he's a massive value add this upcoming offseason. All right, now let's talk about Drake London, Mr. Drake London, my favorite wide receiver in this upcoming draft class, in this upcoming season. Drake London gets Kirk Cousins. I talked about it a little bit already with the Kirk Cousins video when we talked about that after free agency. Go check that video out if you want a little bit of a longer explanation on my thoughts here. But currently the wide receiver 13, and I think this is egregiously low for Drake London because I think Drake London has wide receiver number 1 overall potential. You look at Kirk Cousins and what he's always been able to do for his wide receiver number 1. They are always fantasy relevant throughout the league. Whether it was Adam Thielen, Stephon Diggs, or Justin Jefferson, or you go back to Deshaun Jackson, who obviously wasn't just Kirk Cousins, but he was good with other people. Pierre Garçon was amazing in fantasy football with Kirk Cousins. Jamison Crowder was really, really good with Kirk Cousins back in the Redskins days, back in those days. Drake London has suffered by not having a good quarterback through 2 years now. And he never got to play with Matt Ryan like Kyle Pitts did, where he kind of experienced a little bit of an upsell there. But Drake London at wide receiver 13, he's going to finish higher than that. He had 110 targets last year. I guarantee you that number is going to be closer to 150 to 160. He's going to see a massive uptick. The quality of those targets is going to go up. He had 900 yards on 70 catches last year for a 13 yard per catch number average, which is great. His yards per target were 8.2. Finished with 13.2. So he was getting a solid 5 yards after catching every single catch last year, which is just crazy. He was very good after the catch, and he only had 2 touchdowns, guys. Finishes the wide receiver number 37. It's not going to be the same with Kirk Cousins. Go buy him because I do think he is going to skyrocket to the moon, and this is your last chance to go get Drake London. So again, if you want my longer thoughts on that, go check out the Kirk Cousins video on the channel as well. All right, the other wide receiver I want to talk about really quickly is going to be Michael Wilson with the Arizona Cardinals. Now, I don't know why people aren't a little bit more excited, and I get it. Michael Wilson was a late round pick, drafted, I think, in the 5th round or 4th round of this last year's draft. 1 year, he had 38 catches for 565 yards. They used him in the intermediate section of the field. But again, just like Drake London, he had 9.7 yards per target, 14.9 yards per catch, which again, he was averaging 5 more yards after he caught the ball, which is just really, really good. Currently the 301 to 302. And you're saying, well, why would I invest in this guy? Because they're about to go and get Marvin Harrison Jr. You're not wrong. But let's look at what happened with the Arizona Cardinals this last offseason. They have lost Hollywood Brown. They traded Rondale Moore. Their number 1 player at wide receiver on their depth chart is Michael Wilson and Greg Dortch. They have not brought in a single wide receiver in free agency. They've had many chances to bring in some of these guys, and I expect them to bring in somebody. There's a few people that are still out there, but all indications are they're going to get Marvin Harrison Jr. or Malik Neighbors. They could surprise us and take Malik Neighbors at 4 overall, but they're going to get a wide receiver at 4 for Kyler Murray. Well, Kyler Murray can sustain multiple wide receivers in this offense. They have Trey McBride. James Conner is still a receiving threat, but there is a massive opening for the number 2 wide receiver in this offense. Now, am I saying that Michael Wilson is going to be top 24? I don't necessarily think that he's going to finish that highly, but if he can finish as 36, we need these guys to fill out our wide receiver roles. Unless you're completely loaded with multiple top 12 guys, top 24 guys, you still need some depth there at the wide receiver position for injuries, for bye weeks, for all that stuff. Most people playing in 3 wide receiver leagues now. It's becoming very common. You need that depth at the position. And for the wide receiver 70, I think that the opportunity is so high for Michael Wilson this upcoming season. And all the offseason moves say that they believe in him, at least for this year. And everyone's saying, well, they don't have any draft capital invested in him. The Rams don't have anything invested in Puka Nacua. They could move on from him tomorrow. But Puka Nacua is universally a top 10 dynasty wide receiver right now. Why is that? The team believes in him. And if Michael Wilson can get that belief in him this upcoming season, which I believe a full season with Kyler Murray can do for him, why would they move on from him? Why? He has to give them a reason to move on from them. And that's where I like Michael Wilson. I think the upside is huge. And again, for an early 3rd round pick, that's nothing, guys. That's nothing. You're taking a shot on an unknown wide receiver at that point. Who knows at that point? But I just think that the value is way higher for Michael Wilson. Wide receiver 70 overall. Give me that all day. All right, let's go over to the tight end position. I got 2 guys here for you, and then we'll wrap it up. All right, tight end number 1, Jake Ferguson with the Dallas Cowboys, and he's currently going around early 2nd round pick. He's the tight end number 12, which I don't understand. Finished as a tight end 9 last year, and it was only his 2nd year in the league. Gets that 3rd year tight end bump where they get to believe in him a little bit more. He established himself with Dak Prescott. And again, you look at the moves that the Dallas Cowboys have made this last offseason, they haven't brought anybody in. There is a massive opening here for him to repeat what he did last year. And I think what he did last year is extremely repeatable. Had 102 targets, 71 receptions for 761 yards. I actually think that the touchdown number is a little low for what he could do. Only 5 touchdowns last year. I think that number could jump up to around 7 or 8. And all of a sudden you're looking at a top 7, top 5 dynasty tight end. Jake Ferguson is going much too low, in my opinion. You look at the tight end rankings, right, and who all is going ahead of him. It's just, I get it, I understand it, but we've seen it now with Jake Ferguson. But you've got Laporta, Brock Bowers is the dynasty wide receiver or tight end 2, Trey McBride, TJ Hawkinson, who is coming off of injury. He's not even healthy, guys. Mark Andrews, Kyle Pitts, Dalton Kincaid. Also, TJ Hawkinson has Sam Darnold, guys, or JJ McCarthy. I don't know why we would take him. I like TJ Hawkinson. I really, really do. But why are we putting him that high? He's not going to be healthy to start the year, and he's going to have either a rookie or Sam Darnold. That's not a great sign, guys. Not a great sign. Dalton Kincaid, Travis Kelce, who's aging out completely, George Kittle, David Njoku, Evan Ingram. I can see the argument for those 2 guys. Again, I'd take Jake Ferguson over them a little bit. I think that he's younger and he's shown an upside, where those guys have been a little bit more hit or miss. But I just think that the upside is way too high for Jake Ferguson. And I think that we are kind of sleeping on him a little bit there. So Jake Ferguson, go buy him. Again, early 2nd for Jake Ferguson. Feels like a steal in Dynasty. So that's my thoughts on him. And the last guy really quickly to talk about is going to be Pat Freiermuth. Again, another Pittsburgh Steeler. I like the opportunity a lot, whether it's Justin Fields or Russell Wilson. Both of these guys have shown a a liking to go to the tight end position. And a lot of people forget how highly Pat Freiermuth was rated before last season. Last season, he never really got it going. He got banged up in the season and missed a lot of games. He only played 12 games, but the quarterback play was also horrendous. And, Matt Canada was not a great offensive coordinator. If you go back 2 years ago, I predicted exactly this happening, although I got it a little bit wrong. 2 years ago, I said that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to keep Matt Canada for one more year. They did that. They brought him down on the field. I predicted that they were going to keep him a year, fire Matt Canada, try and make it work again with Kenny Pickett, and then ultimately decide that Kenny Pickett is not the guy and move on from him. Well, they did all of that, except they got rid of Kenny Pickett 1 year before I thought that they were ultimately going to. So quarterback play has been a massive problem again in Pittsburgh. Say what you want about Russell Wilson, but he still was a top 12 quarterback last year for fantasy football. He can get the ball to his guys, and you pair that with Arthur Smith and how he used Jonnu Smith this last year. Say what you want. Well, it was Jonnu, not Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts wasn't fully healthy, and there was all that as well. Pat Freiermuth fits more of a Jonnu Smith role anyway, where Kyle Pitts is more of a wide receiver. He's a big-bodied wide receiver in a tight end's body, right? So I think Pat Freiermuth has the option to go back to what he did his rookie year. 7 touchdowns, I think, is a low bar for this offense, especially with Russell Wilson or Justin Fields. And I think that his current value, where he is tight end number 19, is going to get absolutely smashed. I think in a year's time, I would not be shocked if we were saying, who would you rather have, Pat Freiermuth or Cole Kmet? Pat Freiermuth or George Kittle, one of these two guys, right, who are ultimately top 12 guys. So 207 to 208, again, this is the Bucky Irvin range of the draft. I think that that's just a massive steal. He's equally valued with Luke Musgrave, Isaiah Likely, Jatavion Sanders, a rookie who hasn't even been drafted yet. Like, people are just forgetting about how highly we liked Pat Freiermuth going into last year. So I think that he's a massive steal there. So these are my players that I think are must-haves for the 2024 season. I'm trying to get them in almost every league that I can. Hopefully you guys are following my advice and you can go and get them as well. But let me know your thoughts again down below in the comments. One last time, you can follow me over on Twitter at TDC_Calvin, the podcast at FF After Dark. We're available on YouTube, Spotify, Google, Apple. If you can, please, one more time, just subscribe to the channel. It helps us out. Leave a comment, leave a like. We like to hear from you guys as it is. So if you guys have any content that you want to hear in the next coming weeks, just let me know, and I'd love to put a video together for it. Dale will be back again. We'll try and get him back for all the Friday episodes if we can. And if there's anything else, just let us know. So thank you guys so much for listening. And until next time, have a good night.
And we all got dreams. We all want things. But what you gonna do for it? How you gonna move for it? What you gonna be?